Hey, this is Jared Cohen here with cpbgrowth.com and another episode of Preventative Practice. Today, obviously, the theme is CrossFit Games Open 16.1. We're in it, and I want to help you better prep. That's simple. Overhead lunges, burpees, chest to bar pull-ups is what has been delivered. It's on the menu, and it's 20 minutes. So I'm thinking about how can I give you a lot of tools to help you better prep your system to endure that dosage of the 20 minutes. Particularly on my mind is, what is it going to take for that shoulder to really withstand the stability of good active overhead positioning, as well as what's going on at the wrist, having to spend so much time in extension. We'll spend a little bit of time on the lower body, but we've split it up in two here, and most of the time is going to be upper body. Here at Outlier CrossFit, we are swimming with mosquitoes, so we're going to try and be fast here. You can see we've already killed one, and we don't want to spend any more time getting eaten. So without further ado, let's jump in. We're going to pull a bunch of different concepts together and give some shout outs along the way. So CARS, controlled articular rotations. This is a concept from Dr. Andre Ospina from Functional Range Conditioning, and we're going to look at this at the shoulder. So come on over here. I get organized, feet straight, squeeze the butt, belly tight. One controlled articular rotation at the shoulder is going to start with flexion and external rotation as I'm coming overhead. I keep the ribs down. When I run out of room, I'm reaching to get a little bit of that upward rotation, and then I internally rotate, trying to keep that head neutral, get as much internal rotation as I can from behind, and then I reset. I would do that 5 more times, and then I would follow that up with another 6 going in the other direction. So I start with extension, palm is facing up, trying to keep that thoracic extension, and then externally rotate to finish overhead. Okay, and then I get the other arm. We'll do this again in kneeling. So here's my tabletop position, belly's tight. Forward flexion, external rotation. Run out of room, I start internally rotating. I want to try and stay in this sagittal plane, so avoid coming off to the side too much. Palm is up behind me, and then I reset the other direction, taking the shoulder into extension, internal rotation, coming around to that flexion with external rotation. My thumb is facing up to finish. Next, our shoulder blades. Prep the scapula for movement so that when I need them to stabilize, they're ready to go. Back to my organized standing position. Feet are straight, butt is on, belly's tight. We'll take this left arm again. Elevation, retraction, depression, protraction. One direction. For the other direction, depression, retraction, elevation. Trying to just move independently on this one side, resisting movement elsewhere. We take that to the ground where my hands are down, creating a closed chain at the shoulder joints. So now I'm just going to have 6 repetitions in both directions for both shoulder blades happening together. Here, really work on the motor control to maintain good midline stabilization and move at the shoulder blades without that loss of without that loss of position. So here I am. Elevation, right? That's my shrug. Retraction, depression, protraction. Push away. That's one direction. Go in the other direction. I'm already protracted. I depress, retract, elevate. 1 by 6, both directions. Coming back up to standing, I finish with my wrists. So something I'm going to talk a little bit more about coming up here is being able to prep the wrist to actively be in positions. So when the bar is here, the wrist is pretty much passively in extension, which is why the wrist gets very irritated. So what we're looking for is being able to control each position that we're going to end up in and get the muscular firing to sustain that control. Arms out in front, you're going to do both sides, both directions, open hand, closed hand. So when I start with an open hand, I'm starting an extension. You can see how I'm actively trying to pull my fingertips towards my forearm, and then I veer off. Okay? Going to the right here, trying not to have the elbow bend or any rotation in the shoulder. Coming down into flexion, flexing hard, coming around the bend. You can see this is where other parts of my body want to try and take up for that lack of independent movement. I just resist that as best I can, and there I am back at the beginning. Other direction, veering off to the side, flexing hard, resetting. Okay? So I get 6 one direction, 6 the other, open hand, closed hand. Moving on. Bullet point number 2, joint capsule prep for the wrist involving some pails and rails, which is another Andrea Ospina concept. So we'll come over here. We're using the band as we've seen as a part of our Kelly Starrett supple leopard methodology. I'm going to just show you with this setup. You can see I'm getting this posterior glide of the joint capsule. You can do this with some lateral distraction. You can do it here again where you're getting this posterior side before I was getting actually the anterior side. I'm just going to show you here. And instead of just kind of hanging out somewhat unagendalessly with the band around the wrist, I'm going to have you cue some particular neuromuscular facilitation. So the wrist is in extension right now because of how it's sitting against the ground. So what I want you to do is think about trying to flex the wrist into the floor. So you can see how I'll make that very active by getting my fingertips to really grip and imagine as though I could flex into the floor, like I'm picking up some mud. I'm going to hold that contraction. This is my progressive angle for the pails for about 10 seconds. And then I switch and I'm going to go the regressive angle. So now I want to think about not just passively being here, but actually trying to extend actively at the wrist, in which it's going to feel like my fingertips want to come towards my forearm and I'll feel some cramping there at the wrist. I'm going to hold that for another 10 seconds. When that is up, I'll now just see if I can take up a little bit more slack. All right, come out of that. Come back at the board here. You can see I've prescribed this pretty generally, about 2 minutes per side. I do a couple cycles of this progressive angular isometric inflection and then that regressive angular isometric in extension here. For each orientation you may set up with, whether it's this anterior glide of the band, posterior, etc., etc. Bullet point number 3, arm bars and get-ups. So second piece of equipment that is going to come into play here is a dumbbell. I wouldn't go too heavy because obviously, right, we're going to need to hold 95 pounds or 65 pounds overhead. But what will be nice about this is that overhead stability while also getting some posterior stretch of the capsule. So I'm setting up like I'm doing a Turkish get-up. Let that shoulder sit into the back of the socket, and then I'm going to lead with that leg till I come across. Notice the other arm's going to come to that overhead position where I can rest my head. And then here, can I apply the stability to let that bell sit right over the top of my shoulder? I don't want it to flail back and forth, and I want that shoulder to sit back into that pocket. The more I can reach my hips to the ground, the better. And then for a little extra credit here, can you create that external rotation torque? This is where you're going to start feeling a little bit more unstable, but that's where you need work. That's where you need work to really ensure you've got good shoulder mechanics to withstand the 20 minutes. And then I come back here and I reset. I have that prescribed there on the board for one set of 3 per side, about 20-second hold. And then you're going to follow that up with just this portion of the get-up here as another stability drill. Squeeze the butt, belly tight, kneeling lunge, working on that unilateral stability that obviously you can see the relevance here to what's going to come for our overhead walking lunges. In this position, I'm going to jut my hips off to the side to get some lateral flexion and control my hand down, just like I would if I was returning to my supine position at the start of the Turkish get-up. And then I come back up. So that's my range of motion for this get-up movement I've included in the warm-up. You're going to do this 5 times. Every time I reset, I recreate that stability. Notice there's that active shoulder. I'm not shrugging, but I'm reaching up for that range of motion. Once again, 3 sets of 5 per side. Bullet point number 4 here. We're going to play with a yoga tune-up movement, which goes by the name of Dancing with Myself. We got a nice little dancing figurine, thanks to Mary Jane, my wonderful girlfriend behind the camera, and the artistry behind the board. We're going to play with this in 2 ways. So this is one I took from fellow yoga tune-up teacher Keith Wittenstein on Instagram. We're going to play with the shoulder mechanics in an open chain, and then do the actual yoga tune-up move, Dancing with Myself, against the wall. So you're going to set up in a triangle position, known in the yoga space as triangle, and another Sanskrit name that I can't remember. Okay, here's my position, trying to get the heels in a line. Let's see how I got this right here. Nope. Okay, so same side as the back leg. I'm overhead, squeezing the butt. Don't need a heavy plate here. This is just 10 pounds, just to give you some tactile cueing of what's happening at the shoulder. Notice I'm looking for that external rotation. I lead, front knee is going to stay extended, going down. As I come down, I'm going to internally rotate. Try and keep this hip back. I get a nice stretch through that lateral seam, which we're usually missing, and then I want to come back up and wind up into that position of stability. So a different kind of unilateral loading that we're looking at here. Internally rotate as I come down, externally rotate, pizza spinning to finish up top. All right? We have that there. We're going to do another just one set of 6 per side. So that's what I'm referring to as the open chain. And then we'll come over here to show you the actual closed chain Dancing with Myself yoga tune-up move. This is going to be difficult for a lot of people struggling with some shoulder range of motion, so just do the best you can with this. What we just did prior should help you prep what's now going to happen at the wall. My hand is going to start a little bit above shoulder height. Good organized posture, feet are straight. Notice my, sorry about that, my fingertips are going to be facing down, okay? I want to really try and keep that palm against the wall, especially the heel of my palm. And then I start turning away from that hand, pressing into that wall. I'm squeezing the butt. As I'm 180 degrees away, I'm going to bend that elbow, a little bit of some spinal extension, and try and come all the way around, where now I'm totally internally rotated and extended at the shoulder, hips are squared up, and then I bring that back through. Breathe, breathe, breathe. You can see here I'm missing a little bit, heel, the palms coming up, do your best, and then reset. Lastly, for the upper body prep, 1, 2, 3, 4, bullet point number 5, some more dynamic movement just to put it all together. Some thoracic bridging and some crab walking. So this is a thoracic bridge that comes from Max Schenk of Ambition Athletics. Start in a push-up plank-like position, and then I will take my right leg coming underneath, I cut under, and then I'm going to shift on just the right hand and bridge those hips up. But notice what's happening with the left hand. I'm continuing to try and reach towards the right so that I'm getting this rotation through my upper back. It's a great way to tie everything together for especially what's going to come at the hips, good hip extension, and then that thoracic rotation. I'll just have you switch back and forth with this. And then start playing with how that would transition into a crab walk. And here's where you can get nice and freestyled, right? And just mess around a little bit, okay? Play with some of these shapes. That's why I've just prescribed it in a little bit more of an open-ended way, 2 to 4 minutes. Switching gears a little bit, lower body. What do we need to account for on the lower body? Primarily the hips, and then a little bit at the ankle, okay? Starting back with cars again, standing and kneeling. I recommend doing the standing portion while holding on to something. Hip flexion, external rotation, keep the knee high, internal rotation, extension. That's one direction. The other direction, extension, internal rotation, external rotation, flexion, come back around. When I see that in kneeling, flexion, external rotation, internal rotation, try and keep that knee high, pointing down. Squeeze the butt, and bring that back through. 1 by 6 per side, each direction. For the ankle, just in standing, the ankle, it's just like the wrist. So I want to apply the same concept of independently moving at the ankle, trying to quiet everything else that's going on. Dorsiflex to start, right? It's the same thing as our wrist extension. And then veer off to the right, coming down, plantar flex, hard, engage the contraction, and then I'm coming around that corner. Do 6 rotations in one direction, 6 in the other. The only piece of soft tissue work that we're gonna do is another Yoga Tune-Up branded rollout known as put your butt back on your butt. Look at that nice toted animation, okay? This is a really quick way to make sure your glutes are working, okay? And we need them to work so that you resist some of the overextension faults, especially when in that lunge, and help you make sure that you're owning that hip extension. So a little butt shot here to see what it will look like before I demo this on the ground. The balls are going to be positioned vertically. I'm trying to get them to hook in. Okay, if you don't have Yoga Tune-Up balls, you can use lacrosse balls, or more importantly, you can talk to your local dealer of Yoga Tune-Up balls and make sure you got that on hand in the arsenal. Okay, so I'm hooking in. The rubber of the balls is going to help me hook into the tissues, and then I'm one directionally plowing towards the middle, reset. One directionally plow towards the middle, reset. I'll put your butt back on your butt on the ground. I start essentially leaning to the side the balls are on, and then I'll continue to roll in that direction as the balls smush my skin and subsequent layers of tissues in towards the middle, and I reset. I try and get about 10 to 20 passes there, okay? You don't need to spend a huge chunk of time, but really make sure that that butt has that tissue localized where it needs to actually turn on. Last but not least, a little joint capsule flow here. Flexion and extension. I got band to account for some of that distraction. 2 shapes. Lateral distraction for my squat shape. This is that bottom of the lunge essentially. Foot is down. I'd spend about 3 to 5 seconds here, and then I turn that around, and there's my lunge extension. Notice how I purposely prepped the soft tissue work on the butt first, so that now when you work into this stretch, you actually have the capacity to turn that butt on. And then I'm going back and forth. 2 minutes here, owning these 2 shapes. Control, control. We got to expand the range, then we control the range, and then we go out there and we create some awesome PRs. Guys, that is all. Thank you for sticking with me here. Movement prep. I wish you all the best of luck. I'm super excited for this year, 2016, what that'll bring for us as a community and competition. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. I'm Jared Cohen, Train with Purpose. I look forward to the season. See you next week.